Back at it here with the Two Deep NFL podcast, proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire Kansas City Metro and currently hiring for all positions. All positions. Check out all the information at ganasphalt.com. We review here on our Two Deep podcast what we thought this year would be. What were our division winners? What were our wild cards? What do we think the Super Bowl would be? Where did we get it right on? Where were we way off? We do it all here on the Two Deep Podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. GAN Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions. Project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience. With paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out ganasphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And good evening and welcome. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember we stream live. Now that we head into the off season, it could be Tuesday nights, sometimes Wednesdays. But you can be a part of it. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. What else? Twitch. We're just about everywhere. And of course, you can get us wherever you get your podcasts as well. Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, Soren Petro with you as we break down what we got right, what we got wrong when it comes to the NFL predictions this year. Guys, let's jump right into it. And I was probably the most painful podcast I've ever done. You'll get to why that is a little bit later on, but oh my God, painful to do. First, I'll tell you, we are brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. You can find them online at ganasphalt.com. Let's start with our divisions. Guys, we all had the Bills. We named it there. Anything we want to take away from having the Bills win it or no? Just move right along. They were who we thought they were. They took some run. We got it.
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to it, right? The Bills were supposed to be good. They were good. We almost had all of the AFC East teams besides them not make the playoffs, which is kind of interesting. The Dolphins did squeeze in at the end, but the Bills are kind of uncontested in that division.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can't. I mean, they are what the Chiefs are to the AFC West right now. They are the cream of the crop, and they got the best quarterback. It's hard to pick against them. I pick them next year without even thinking about it.
I don't see anything change. The Miami Dolphins, we'll see if they're healthy, they could be a challenger. But I think that one was pretty easy to pick out. We go to the AFC North. You guys, Jeff and Eric, you had the Bengals. I'm the idiot that had the Ravens. I'm not that dumb. They did
not a bad pick.
Not a bad pick. And I think had Lamar Jackson stayed healthy. I mean, if I wanted to sit here and, well, if Lamar's not hurt, then I get that right. I listened back to the podcast. I said the power of the last place schedule was a lot of what I was riding on. But what I wasn't taking into account is the thing that I always talk about. Quarterbacks that run get hurt. And why I would put my money on the fact that he wouldn't get hurt, Lamar Jackson wouldn't get hurt, I think was the lesson that I learned here. If you're going to, from a betting standpoint, Eric and I are guys that like to have more than a rooting interest on the game. That was a foolish side to be on. Now, listen, we had to pick something. I don't mind it. I'm not a moron. But Jeff or Eric, the Bengals are the team in that division.
Yeah, but I disagree that betting the Ravens was a bad bet. The Ravens were like 2-1 to win the division. That's a good bet, right? If you can get, in a division where Jacoby Brissett's going to start 11 games and the Steelers, and that granted the Steelers somehow had a winning record again, but I had a lot of wagers on the Bengals and the Ravens just because I felt like it was an or situation. And I just picked the Bengals at the very end because, I felt like injuries started happening. Jeff and I actually hung out at Ravens camp for a day, and you could just see like there's guys standing on the sideline all the freaking time. And even people within that building will tell you like the fact that they can't stay healthy is a fundamental flaw in their process. A team that I think the world of as far as analytics and stuff, they don't stay healthy. And that's something that's hard to get over.
Yeah, I think people underestimate how talented the Bengals are, and they found out this year how talented they are and how well coached they are. I think last year there was a sense of this was a fluke. They kind of lucked into some stuff. They kind of were the Arizona Cardinals back in the day when Kurt Warner showed up and they had Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bold and they got hot and made the Super Bowl, but this wasn't going to last forever. And people saw this was a legit team, and not just the stars like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Burrow, but the defense had legit players on it, and they were really well coached. And you have to wonder if they don't lose those 3 offensive linemen, do they get back to the Super Bowl? A lot of things fell against them in the postseason. I'm not taking anything away from the Chiefs, but they were the hottest team in the AFC for the second half of the season. The last 10 game season, nobody was playing better football than the Bengals were. And that's what I saw them becoming, or saw them being capable of becoming back in the offseason.
And let me say, I 100% have your back, Jeff. And let me be the one to say, simmer down, Chiefs fans, anyone who's getting upset with that statement. You won, right? Yeah. You have the trophy. Flags fly forever. No one's trying to take that trophy away from you and making this statement. And that's the key to the Chiefs. And that's the key to having an expensive quarterback is that you're good enough to win it. And maybe somebody will be a juggernaut and the Eagles looked like they might've been that team. Right, with the inexpensive quarterback and a really talented team, they almost got there. They almost got it done. The Bengals could have been that team as well, but they got hurt. And when some of the team gets hurt or trips up, the Chiefs are there to pick up the pieces and grab the championship.
And the Chiefs know that.
Yes,
Tampa game,
and that's by design. I mean, that's part of what they're built on.
The Bengals know that too. The Bengals did that to the Chiefs coming off a Super Bowl. Like this Bengals team. The thing that we didn't realize, and this was something I got wrong, you look at the end of the Bengals schedule was supposed to be a wagon. Bucks, Bills, Chiefs, Ravens twice. They were supposed to, and the same thing kind of happened to Kansas City where the schedule was a lot easier than it was on paper preseason, but they didn't lose after, they got, much like the Chiefs in 2021, they got blown out in their 4th loss. The Browns kicked their butts, right? And then they ran the table, had an emotional win against Buffalo in the divisional round, and ran out of gas. Like, the Chiefs outplayed the Bengals by a lot in the AFC title game. And they gave them – but the Bengals were the best team in the AFC for the last month of the year. And they just ran out of gas because it's hard to start 4-4 and make the Super Bowl. Like, because you run out of gas at the end of the year.
I think it's also the Patrick Mahomes effect. When you have Mahomes, he can overcome a lot of things. Right. So you don't have to go all in and say we're going to pay Tyreek Hill and then strip the roster. Be strong everywhere, be deep everywhere, and plan on Patrick Mahomes being healthy, because with his price tag, there's no game plan to winning without him, right? So you just have to plan on him being healthy, and that's what they did. And when the Bengals had some problems at the end, they were there to pick up the pieces. And I don't think they need to apologize, nor do any of us need to apologize about how that team went. AFC South, a little bit different, guys. Jeff and I absolutely bombed it with the Colts. Eric nailed it. I was like, oh God, I wish I had enough guts to pick the Jaguars. I didn't. Let's give the guy who got it right the first take at it. Take your victory bow. Call for the Jaguars in the South. Didn't look good early. Wasn't the stupid Colts that were getting it done. It was the Titans that were kind of paper champions early. Ultimately, you got it right. Nice job, Eric.
Thank you. But when they were 2-6, they had a positive point differential. Like, they were losing a lot of close games, and they were like 0-10 in their last, or 0-15. It was some, like, I remember they lost in London to the Broncos, a close game, and everybody's like, okay, this team just can't win close games, right? And then they go and they win. They come from behind 17 behind to beat the Raiders. They come 17, I believe it was like 17 points down to beat Dallas. They start to win the close games that they were losing before. And we got 2 examples of this, Detroit and two kiddies, right? The Lions and the Jags both had really bad one-score variance early in the year. And then we saw it at the very end of the year where they actually won the game to win the AFC South. They got lucky and won a close game to win that division because that was not a fumble. And so, they were a team that was efficient on offense, better on defense than what people thought, and they were well coached. Doug Peterson is a very good coach. And the quarterback position, I think Trevor Lawrence was kind of bad early in the year, took a step forward. And when a quarterback with that kind of talent plays well, it's easy to win a tough division or not a tough division.
If I were to point to something and say Trevor Lawrence getting hot did make you look a lot better coming down the stretch. Jeff, I think we got this wrong on the same reason. You're right. The Texans are crap. I think we were both right. Like, we didn't see the Titans getting back, that they were too dependent on the running back. We grabbed the wrong team. We both we both kind of liked the Jags, but we weren't ready to go there yet. I feel like I bet you're the same, by default. And that's one thing. I'm not a team by default again. If I got a team that I think is going to be there 2 years from now, I'm going to go back to something else I've said in the past, and I should have said this time. I'd rather be a year early than a year late. I'm clearly a year late on the Jags. That's what I blew. What'd you learn from this one?
Well, before we start giving Eric his flowers, let's remember that he picked 2 AFC South teams in the playoffs, which we'll get to later. We didn't do that.
To actually be good, not to just win by
we didn't do that.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So he saw the Colts as being a legitimate playoff team too. So we were all in that same boat, just depending on how deep we were in it. But yeah, I thought the Colts. I didn't believe in the Titans, but I certainly didn't see the Jags doing what they were doing. And look, I thought Doug Peterson would do a good job with them. The quarterback went a lot farther in terms of development than I thought he would do in 1 year. And they just seem like the perfect example of a team that was spending way too much money in the offseason, taking huge swings. Had guys like Christian Kirk and Brandon Scherf. It was just like, it's either going to be a disaster or it's going to be a success story. And it ended up being a success story. So Eric deserves credit for that. But the Colts always seemed like, they were the Toyota Camry of NFL teams. Like, they're not, flashy, but they get you where you want to go. And they didn't. I didn't see them falling apart as fast as they did with a really good coach in Frank Reich, a classy quarterback in Matt Reich, a league-leading rusher in Jonathan Taylor, in a really good defense. Like, those are things you bet on, in the NFL.
Well,
and so I didn't see that coming.
Here's a lesson, I think, for Bengals, and maybe why they should be happy that Lou Anarumo stayed, is like Matt Eberflus was a loss for them. Yeah. That I don't think people really priced into everything as much as they should have.
I'll put 2 other things out there. Running backs get hurt and ownership matters, right? Those are 2 other things. Frank Reich should have never been fired. That was a mistake. And there's a complete wild card in ownership with that franchise. And I think that's part of it as well. Look, Eric and I both had the Chiefs in the West. Jeff, you went Chargers. Why did you think now was the time to take down the champs of the AFC West?
Well, look, I fall in love with teams that have a lot of talent and have talented quarterbacks. And I thought this is their year. And they played the Chiefs tough. Like, to me, I would feel worse about this if they were just getting blown out like the Raiders were, or the Broncos, just inept. I mean, they show that they can compete and had opportunities, but again, they just couldn't stay healthy and couldn't get out of their own way when it mattered most. So, and I still think they've got, along with the Bengals and the Bills, the best opportunity to challenge the Chiefs for the next couple of years because of the quarterback and some of the coaching they got, but they just couldn't deliver when it mattered, and they couldn't be healthy all year.
Yeah, no doubt. The wild cards. Here we go. Jeff had the Chiefs, Broncos, and Dolphins. So he gets the Chiefs. They got into the playoffs. He had it. He had the wrong team. The Chargers did make the playoffs as well. Broncos, no. Dolphins, yes. Eric had the Ravens, Chargers, and Colts. So he gets 2 teams in there that were in the playoffs. I had the Chargers, Broncos, and Dolphins. Listen, the Dolphins were right for me and Jeff. Ravens, Chargers. The Colts, we've already covered the Colts. Let's talk about the Dolphins. They're the one team we really haven't talked about in there. What do we take away from that? Good coaching, good talent, good quarterback. Jeff, why the Dolphins? Why we get that right?
Well, I think we felt like the Tyreek Hill trade was going to be big for them. They made a ton of really good moves with their offensive line, solidified that by bringing Teron Armstead over. They already had a big-time receiver, a talented receiver in Jalen Waddle. They were just loaded on offense. You were like, how could you screw this up? As long as the quarterback stays healthy, knock on wood, it should be okay. And I think, to be honest with you, I think we overestimated their defense. They were like the Chargers were with this past couple years. They just were not playing up to what they were supposed to be on defense. And so losing, Brian Flores, and they had a holdover as a coordinator there who didn't get it done. I forget Josh, what was his name? His last name? I forget the guy's last name. Yeah, Boyer. And so they couldn't pressure the quarterback. Their back end got very suspect. Byron Jones couldn't stay healthy all year, and it just became a team that had to score 35 points a game to win. But the talent was there.
Yeah, and they had to trade a first-round pick to get Bradley Chubb. And, that was, I went back and looked at some of the discussions we had on Twitter about, should the Chiefs trade a draft pick for a high-end defensive player? Can they win without it? Can they, all this stuff? And, I remember the RG3 tweet was like, the Dolphins Super Bowl odds go through the roof, with the Bradley Chubb acquisition. It's like, I hate to simplify football, but it all comes down to the offense and the quarterback and the coach. And can they, because once that happened, and look, Skylar Thompson, Ema, was very plucky at times and won them a game to get in the playoffs and stuff. But ultimately, nothing matters unless the quarterback and coach are in the right place for a lot of these teams.
All right, let's go to the NFC. NFC East. You two had the Eagles. I had the Cowboys. We all had playoff teams. You two nailed it with the Eagles. I'll just fess up. I was very slow to come around all the way through the Super Bowl. I mean, the Eagles, every week almost, I had to say the Eagles are better than I thought they were. The Eagles, I started here and I was there and I was there and I was there. And every week, I give it to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're a team that was prime. First-year coach, surprisingly makes the playoffs, almost always regresses back. If they don't, you've got what is a class franchise. You got an elite franchise. They didn't. Not only did they not, they ended up being a championship caliber football team. I have nothing but mad props to say about every aspect of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just played the math. The math is you're supposed to regress after a surprising season. Eric, we're going to give you a chance to gloat about the Eagles later. But, Jeff, why were you as bullish on the Eagles being able to not just do what they did the year before, but get even better?
Well, I think that, there's just it's a new way of doing business in the NFL. And they decided to go all in, make a ton of moves. You felt like the quarterback obviously was the key to this, his growth, but they were surrounding him with so much talent that it was hard not to see them being a difference maker. And you can do this. It's important to know you can do this when you're in a conference that doesn't have stellar quarterback play. In the AFC, it's a whole different story. You're trying to play that game, but the Bills found that out, right? But in the NFC, you can do that when you have to deal with a Dak Prescott or a Kirk Cousins or a Matthew Stafford. And they were too loaded. Maurice Jones-Drew, one of my coworkers at the NFL Network, said that it might be the best roster he's ever seen in the salary cap issue. So they were just strong.
Let's go to the NFC.
Other thing that was really derided, Sirianni's a great coach. Can we just I think Sirianni is he might not be the best, schemer or whatever, but I think he's in that Tomlin tier where the motivational kind of guy the teams rally around. He's in that Dan Campbell. I said he's a poor man's Dan Campbell to try to be funny, but he is a Dan Campbell type where it's a motivational thing. It's a going for fourth downs thing. And I think he's very good.
I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on the NFC North. I don't think the Vikings were that good. They won the division with barely a positive point differential.
No, negative point differential.
Was negative? Okay. A negative point differential. So I don't think we were far off and not counting the Vikings. Anything beyond just, hey, it matters that your quarterback show up and be a part of the team all year and not just in snippets. Is there anything else to take away from all three of us missing on the Packers?
I wish I would have had the balls to pick the Detroit Lions. Because they
were
the best team in the division.
But yeah, it'd feel better, Jeff.
It's who's picking against a team that's been in the NFC Championship game, 3 years in a row, won 13 games 3 years in a row with a two-time MVP. Nobody in their right mind is going against that or can foresee that falling apart the way it fell apart.
There's kind of against them and against the Chiefs, you just don't win that many in a row, right? It's just so there's almost a reason to pick against them because of that. But your point's valid. They still have the quarterback back. They've lost all the receivers. That's one thing we all kind of whistle by.
Yeah.
Jeff and I really when we get to later, whistle by the receiver thing a lot, and it burned us. But I think that's something else. Look, we all had the Bucs. That division sucks. They were and I listened back to what we said.
We talked about it at like the biggest lock there is, and we're sweating out a game against who is the quarterback? David Blau on
Panthers.
Christmas. Brady's having to come back from 2 scores down in Arizona against David Blau.
We did get the NFC West right with the 49ers. All of us had the 49ers, but going about it in different ways as I went back and looked at it, we all agreed on the overall strength of the roster. Jeff, you were the most, I guess, strained in making the pick because you were kind of in on Lance. You were getting worried, though, about a lot of people. I remember I don't remember. I just listened to it today. Jimmy Garoppolo was being talked about being back and being the guy. And you're like, listen, I'm in on Lance. Of course, he got hurt, so we don't know. That pushes forward to the next year. But it was a little painful for you to make that pick. But you liked everything about it. You got it right. What do you take away from that one?
Well, it's like they are doing things like the Eagles are doing it, where they're building such a great roster around their quarterback that whoever's playing quarterback, you figure they can win some games. And look, you have Nick Bosa and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and guys like that, Trent Williams, Fred Warner. I mean, their roster is super impressive when you start rattling off those names. So it's hard to not want to pick them. I think they've probably been the most talented team in that division for the last 3 years. I mean, the Rams won the championship last year, but I thought I was taking them more with the mindset of the Rams can't sustain what they were doing last year because that was really like picking up Odell, picking up Von Miller, getting all these guys who played well. It was just they weren't going to do that again, and everybody else was not good enough to compete. So it was really more, okay, this is the best option I can get at this point.
Eric, Jeff's right about the talent of the roster for sure. And are we overcomplicating it if we try to scratch our head and say, well, rookie quarterback contract, right? Even Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't that expensive. There's not that much spent on the quarterback spot, whether it's Lance or Brock Purdy. But there's more than your normal, $7 million for former first round pick quarterback on a first contract. When you put in Lance plus Garoppolo, it ends up being Brock Purdy that ends up being the guy. What's the moral of this story?
Yeah, I think we do have to give Shanahan more credit than maybe you're willing to. I think that he does a really good job of getting people open. I think their running game's overrated, but I think their passing game is really good. Like, I think when you look at how wide open some players are in that scheme, they've drafted receivers, Samuel, Ayuk, Kittle. Like, they got, they do a good job. I think Shanahan's a boob in a lot of ways, like, drafting running backs, the guys in the 3rd round and then playing the guy in the 6th round or spending all that draft capital on McCaffrey and all this stuff. But I think when you take the average, he's a very, very good coach, right? And that kind of overcomes a lot. And with you said the rookie quarterback contract, your errors just don't get magnified, right? You make a mistake and the guy's on a rookie deal, you got money to bring Garoppolo back. You got money to do things that, if the Chiefs with Mahomes, like you said, if they make similar errors now that Mahomes making all that money, they're going to be magnified because they're going to affect the team so much more than if Mahomes is making $10 million. To be clear,
I quote, and I agree with, I quote many people I've talked to in the NFL, great play caller, great play designer with Kyle Shanahan, developed the quarterback. That to me is the part. Like, I get upset that he's overrated, not that he sucks, okay? That everybody acts like, if you give – before this year, there was a poll, Kyle Shanahan or Andy Reid, and Kyle Shanahan won in a landslide. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
Ridiculous.
Okay? What was the poll? I missed that.
We talked about it. I mean, it's like somebody put it up there, which coach is better, and I'm like, come on. Like, but that's the mindset. He's very good. I agree. I picked the Niners to win the NFC West. I don't think he's a boob, right? So can I take my credit, Eric, for just a second?
Of course you can. You nailed this pick.
Yeah.
You nailed.
Let me tell you what we didn't nail. That's the NFC wild cards. Okay. Yeah. This was an unmitigated train wreck by us. Jeff, Rams, Saints, Lions. Eric, Rams, Saints, Lions. Me, Rams, Saints. Ooh, a little flavor. The Commanders. I threw in there, and I thought I was so crafty. with the Commanders in there with that pick.
The Lions at least went 9-8. Can we give Jeff and I a little flower? Like
Yeah.
Jeff said, they're going to get to 9 wins, and he nailed it. And I do think, and the Commanders weren't bad.
So you want a lot of credit because they went 9-8, but want to give nothing to me because the Commanders went 8-1.
I didn't say it. I bet Commanders over 7.5. Like I won my money because.
Yeah. By the way, we should not have been nail biting that one at the end either. But listen, Jared Goff is a former 1-1 quarterback. Okay, Commanders was a bolder pick. We all know it because Dan Campbell.
No way. You got to be kidding me. Commanders won 7 games. And the Lions won 4. 3 games last year.
Yeah.
Come on.
Why weren't we more bullish on the Cowboys? You listen to the podcast. I mean, they were.
I said the Cowboys. I said the Cowboys are either going to win like 12 or 13 games, or they're going to win 4. And look, I mean, think about this. After week 1, they get beat to sleep by the Bucs, who ended up being terrible. Dak gets hurt, right? And they still win 12 games. I think we have to stick. And you said this, Petro, about McCarthy. Do we need to take away the fat coach bias? Like McCarthy's a good coach.
Yes, he
is.
I
know he's not I know he wore it as welcome, and all the people that are like Green Bay fans will tell you no, he sucks. But he won 12 games 2 consecutive years with Dak Prescott, and I like Dak. But my guy led the league in interceptions while missing 5 games. The guy's he's a great quarterback, but he's a limited quarterback. And McCarthy is look, Kirk Cousins ain't winning 12 games 2 years in a row. Right? Yeah. But McCarthy's got Dak winning 12 games 2 years in a row. I think McCarthy deserves a little bit of and Dan Quinn, and obviously Moore, who's now gone. But that coaching staff deserves some credit.
Jeff, your view on the Cowboys?
I thought that losing Amari Cooper was going to be a big hit. They're always up and down. I mean, to be able to trust them to be consistent year in and year out. I couldn't see it coming. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think the Saints have been so good playing against the Bucs in that division. They've been still a pretty talented team. It wasn't like you sat there and said, "Oh, this is a dog crap team." And then the Lions were just kind of a shot in the dark. But I would never pick against a team that won the Super Bowl and just say they can't be in the playoffs the next year. It's hard to do. So the Rams made sense to me in that regard. The Saints and Lions for other reason. I just thought the Cowboys were not going to be good.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. But I think we gained I had the Cowboys in the playoffs. I said a little bit about the Eagles. I mean,
you hadn't won the division.
Yeah, I had the Cowboys win the division, but I had the Eagles out, not even in the playoffs. And I laughed at somebody about the Eagles. We'll get to that here in a minute. So any credit, I will take no credit for the Cowboys because anything I get, I have to pay back threefold. And what I got wrong about the Eagles. So you will not hear me bragging up about the Cowboys. I am intrigued by what did we get wrong about the Saints? What were we thinking about the Saints? I look at that. That's the most asinine thing I've done. I'm fine with my Commanders pick. What the hell was going on with the Saints?
No. See, here's the thing. I think you got the Saints fine. What did they finish? 7-10? They had a 2-score lead against the Bucs in Tampa that Tom if they play Jameis, if Jameis doesn't get hurt, Jameis plays the whole year. They're in the playoffs.
Yeah, but come on, Eric, you can't do that.
Andy Dalton started 15 games for that team. If they start Jameis, they're fine.
You think they're a playoff team if they have Jameis?
Yes, they were a game out of the playoffs.
They don't agree.
What?
He's not under. He's not. Is he? He is still under contract.
A 2-year
I think
deal.
he's a free agent next year. But my thing is, they lost in London on a last-second field goal to the Vikings. They lost. They got 2-score lead with 5 minutes left to Tampa. They lost in the last game of the year to the Falcons, I believe, on a last-second field goal. They were in every game. They were just. I mean, when you have Andy Dalton starting I think it was 14 or 15 games. When Andy Dalton is starting 14 games for your team, you got to change expectations. And I actually think Dalton played well for him. But, if Jameis starts the whole year, they're in the playoffs, I think. I think they win that division if Jameis plays the whole year.
Jeff, how many statements of futility started with if Jameis?
It's been a long time. Yeah, if he hadn't taken the crab legs, if he hadn't gotten that Uber, yeah, but a lot of things would have happened for him. Except been different about his career, right?
Yeah, and the Rams was just I like what you said about, hey, they're defending champs. Like maybe they take a step back, but you're thinking like 10-7 is a big step back, right? Injuries, everything snowballed.
Yeah.
But I think we did maybe underestimate losing a left tackle, losing Eric's talked about the importance of a third wideout. They lost Odell Beckham Jr. In that equation. They had an injury to the quarterback. He was already hurt by the time we were making these picks. So I there were maybe more signs than just but I don't think there's anything wrong with rolling with the defending champions either. All right, let's get to the Super Bowl predictions. Do you want to say best for last or give them their due first, Jeff? What do you want to do?
I would say best for last. Sure.
All right.
Eric's.
Yeah, that's
Eric.
Eric.
He's already kind of teased where he's going or what he did. Yeah.
Jeff and I both went Bills over Packers. I got no problem with the Bills. I'll stand by that. I think the Mar Hamlin thing was wind out of the sails. I think Von Miller getting hurt was a killer for that team. They also were a little bit dinged up in the secondary throughout, starting without Tre'Davious White, having a number of injuries, not just Hamlin at the safety spot. I'm okay with my Bills pick. I think they were good enough to get it done. I think they got to quit running Josh Allen. That's one thing. I think he was beat to hell at the end, and that's one thing that's on the Bills. He could have been healthier and sharper coming down the stretch and maybe put up a better show against the Bengals. I don't mind the Bills. We've talked about the Packers. That's it's just a bad pick on my part. You got any view?
I think my takeaway for the Bills this year, and it depends on what happens with Von Miller or how he comes back, but they got to be more athletic on defense. I think they have to get faster and more explosive. That was the takeaway I had. Now, granted, they were playing their last game of the season in a blizzard, which affected their ability to get after the quarterback in that game against the bad offensive line with the Bengals. But I look at what they have. I think they might have to do what Dan Quinn did in changing up his defensive philosophy when he went to Dallas and getting a little more man coverage, a little more aggressiveness involved, because they looked slow against the Bengals, and that wasn't the same team that we saw earlier this year. But that's going to be a big problem for them. I think obviously offense, we've already discussed that, but the Packers part of this, though, look, I drank the Kool-Aid. I thought Aaron Rodgers would be okay for 4 straight years and have a chance, and clearly that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Eric, take a bow. Eric made a prediction for the Super Bowl, gave great reasons. A rookie quarterback is always in the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to give it to Trevor Lawrence. I can't remember who you ruled out, but you said, and you said that quarterback is Jalen Hurts, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles. In the Andy Reid Bowl, I've got Chiefs over Eagles. I asked you if you'd lost your mind. I may even have, and I just listened to it today, but I may even have called you a jackass. I bow to your superior 2022 football knowledge, because at least Jeff just sat there and went, interesting. I called you a jackass and said you've lost your mind. So I'm the one that owes you an apology. Well done, my friend. I mean, you nailed it, buddy.
I got to be honest, it was one of these things.
You didn't even remember it, though, 10 weeks later that was.
No, because my thing is, you met Dave, when he and I working at PFF together, our desks were next to each other, and he kind of looked at me, you go back and look at my TikTok at Eric Eager _. I had a bunch of TikToks on how I was betting Eagles overs, right? And that number went from 8.5 to 9 to 9.5 win total. I put a large wager on the Eagles before I went to Sumer to win the East, and me and Dave were just kind of if Jalen Hurts can do it, we were watching Jalen Hurts tape in the office, and we're if he can continue to ascend, this is going to be fat tail. And then we look at the NFC, right? And as Jeff said, I think Jeff said it really well. In the NFC, a team like the Eagles can win the conference. I don't think you can win the AFC with a quarterback who is maybe a little as limited as a passer. I think you really have to have somebody who can, and granted, he did for one game went toe-to-toe with Mahomes. But I think week to week, there were so many weak teams in the NFC, and the Eagles didn't trail in the second half of all but 4 games all year when Hurts was playing. So it was just so set up for them. They had I think the 4th easiest schedule in the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the Chiefs pick was more me. I had a big opinion on how they would replace Tyreek Hill, and I was right. And that was like everybody was like, oh, and there were great reasons. Tyreek Hill is one of the best receivers to ever play the game of football. He proved it this year. But the way that they constructed their receiving core was very resilient, and the only missing link was how Mahomes would adjust to it. And I felt like in Mahomes' career, taking the team-friendly deal, taking the long-term deal, how you think about Mahomes now after 5 years as a starter. He's one being a big play quarterback. He's one being a underneath yak quarterback. He's one from ahead. He's one from behind. He's one with Bieniemy. He's one with Reed. He's one with Valdez, Scantling, Smith-Schuster, and all this. He's one with Sammy Watkins making $16 million and all this kind of stuff. Like when you think about Mahomes, the only other quarterback that has won with all those different data twists is Tom Brady. And to me, I felt like there were a couple inflection points in Brady's career where we're like, can he still do it? And then he would always do it literally that year. And I thought Mahomes had that kind of year this year.
Yeah, it was impressive. And not only do I have to bow to your knowledge, I actually bet the Eagles under. So you're making money on them. I'm losing money on them. That one blew up in my face. It'll never blow up in your face if you call Gann Asphalt and Concrete. All things parking lots, proudly serving the entire KC metro area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every single project comes with a written warranty. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. In fact, they're hiring as well if you want to be part of Kansas City's best parking lot, fixing Kansas City's parking lots better than anybody else. They're hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Pay starts at $30 per hour. Paid time off and insurance are just some of the benefits you can get. Go to GannAsphalt.com. For more info, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor. All things parking lots. For Jeff Chadiha, for Eric Eager, my name is Soren Petro saying